massive welcome to everybody here, whether it's your morning or your evening. Really delighted that you could join us. Emotional intelligence is a very, very important subject, and it does need to be part of how we teach. Even if we think, no, our focus is academic intelligence, that's what matters. It has to go hand in hand with emotional intelligence, because if kids do really, really well academically, but can't manage stress, can't manage their frustration, don't feel motivated, can't work well in teams, they really aren't going to get very far. So we need to teach the whole child and definitely focus on their emotional well-being and their emotional intelligence whilst we teach them. Now, I want to start this session checking in with you to see how you're feeling emotionally this morning. So you just take a moment and think, am I okay? Am I comfortable? If I'm not, maybe I need to do some deep shoulder rolls and unclench my hands to get the tension out. Maybe I need to slip off my shoes or get a quick glass of water. What can I do to make sure I'm really present and open to learning? Have I got some worries? If so, just acknowledge what they are and then park them for the next 45 minutes so you can focus on this session. And that's what we want to teach the kids that we're in class with. We want to teach them to check in with themselves, make sure they're okay and open and ready to learn. So self-awareness is a key part of emotional intelligence. And then really be positive about the experiences that they're about to have in the classroom, just like I want you to feel really positive about this experience today. So if you say to yourself, I am an excellent teacher, it's important to acknowledge that I am an excellent teacher. And this session will show me how to develop my teaching of emotional intelligence and approach it with real positivity and focus, because that really helps when we come to teaching. So you've checked in with yourself, you're comfortable and you're ready to learn. And that's what we want for the kids that we're teaching. So today I'm going to be telling you how to bring emotional intelligence into your classroom and into your own life. Emotional intelligence in the classroom is something that is increasingly important. As Daniel Goleman said in his book, Emotional Intelligence, Why It Can Matter More Than IQ, if your emotional abilities aren't in hand, if you don't have self-awareness, if you can't manage distressing emotions, and gosh, so many of our kids that we're teaching have been through some really distressing emotions recently, right? If they can't have empathy, well, they're not going to have effective relationships. And it does not matter how smart they are, they're not going to get very far. We all know intelligent people, don't we, who really seem to struggle in life, who aren't resilient and don't bounce back when things go wrong, who don't ever seem to get those promotions, or if they do, really struggle with stress. And actually, it doesn't matter how well you do, if you don't have the emotions and the intelligence in place, you're not going to get very far. Today, we're going to look at what emotional intelligence is, the history of emotional intelligence, the benefits for children, and then later on for them as adults of being emotionally intelligent. And we're going to look at how it links with academics, because it really does. It's been proven time and time again that children with emotional intelligence do better academically, and we'll look at why. And then we'll look at the elements that make up emotional intelligence and actually look at how you can teach these in the classroom in practical terms. So, are you emotionally intelligent? As a person, do you think you are? Do you recognize the emotions you are feeling, or do you just feel stressed or tense? Do you know that it's frustration or overwhelm or tiredness? Can you manage those feelings without allowing them to swamp you? Do you take action? Do you talk about them? Do you go for a run? Do you de-stress? Can you motivate yourself to get jobs done? You set yourself short, interim goals, give yourself great feedback, make it challenging but interesting and manageable. You sense the emotions of people around you and respond in a really positive way. If you've answered yes to these questions, it's likely that you've developed some or all of the skills that form the basis of emotional intelligence. I would guess you're probably better in some areas than others. Most people are. But these are the areas to work on if you want to do well in regard to emotional intelligence. And these are the things we want to teach the young people we care for. So what is it? Well, emotional intelligence, you will sometimes see written as EI, sometimes as EQ. And basically, it's the ability to understand, use, and manage emotions positively. When you do this, oh my goodness, it relieves stress. It helps you communicate well. It overcomes challenges, stops arguments. It's really useful. All emotions are valid, even anger, because it tells you that something is wrong. You could use that anger to make changes. However, it can also be really destructive. So it's about using our emotions helpfully and teaching children to do the same. If they're frustrated, perhaps it's because they don't understand. So they need to ask you for clarity about what you want them to do. However, if they allow that frustration to swamp them and stop them doing the work, that's an unintelligent response to their emotions. So we need to teach them to use their emotions positively. It's such a useful skill. And these skills, of course, are key to happy, safe, productive lives and good relationships. Emotional intelligence is a relatively new concept. Of course, Maslow talked about emotional strength and how that was important, and therapists have known forever, since Greek times, philosophers too, that it's very important to know how you feel and to act on those feelings in positive ways. But in terminology, emotional intelligence came about in the 1990s by Peter Salovey and John Mayer. They described it as a form of social intelligence that involved monitoring your feelings and others, choosing between them, and using the information that you get to guide your thinking and action. So you don't just react to something, you check in with yourself about how you and other people feel, and then choose what to do with that information. This was really well received as a theory, and it initiated so much research, which is still ongoing. Lots of the projects looked at the significance of emotional intelligence. How useful is it? In one study that they did, a group of people saw an upsetting film, one that made them feel sad, anxious, nervous, and worried. Those who scored really well on emotional clarity, saying how they felt about the film, recovered more quickly because their brain made sense of it. I thought, okay, that's what's going on. That's why I feel this way. And so they were able to move forward. Being able to name feelings and being aware of your feelings promotes resilience. People who don't check in with how they feel, who get swamped by their feelings, do not bounce back as easily because the brain cannot make sense of it. So emotional intelligence promotes resilience and robustness. And both of those things are so important. Our children have been through a lot this past year with coronavirus, and many of them are struggling with their mental and emotional health. We want them to be resilient. So it's really important now more than ever to really support their emotional intelligence. In the 1990s, a psychologist called Daniel Goleman, who actually wrote about science for the New York Times, became aware of emotional intelligence. And he looked at it in relation to leaders. And he argued that it wasn't academic intelligence that guaranteed business success, but it was actually emotional intelligence that made the difference. And he described emotionally intelligent people as having 4 characteristics. He said, emotionally intelligent people, they're great at understanding their own emotions, just like we did at the start of this session, checking in with yourself, self-awareness. Then he said, emotionally intelligent people are good at managing their emotions. That's what we did. Got a glass of water, took off our shoes, shrugged our shoulders, managed how we were feeling. But he also said emotionally intelligent people are empathic to the emotions of others. They know if the group is bored or interested, or if other people are annoyed or aren't understanding. And then he said, emotionally intelligent people are great at handling other people's emotions. So they can inspire them, they can motivate them, they can give them little jobs to do or help calm them down. So self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, and social management. These are the keys to emotional intelligence. The benefits of emotional intelligence, very simplistically, can be described as this. Any child who recognizes how they feel and can calm themselves when they are angry, upset, frustrated, or annoyed are likely to do well in difficult circumstances. It goes exactly the same with adults. And those who don't, well, the outcomes are not so good. A review in the annual review of psychology found emotionally intelligent children had better relationships with others, better academic achievement. They were able to overcome blocks and boredom, frustration and overwhelm. They were able to ask for help, get themselves organised. They do better at school. And they had better psychological well-being. Kids who are emotionally intelligent have higher self-esteem because they move quickly to problem solving. They don't just sit with their problems. So they feel less insecure, less depressed, and more in control. They also, of course, make better health choices. They don't eat 10 chocolate biscuits or drink all the fizzy pop. They'll make sure they have the water. Perhaps they have one small snack and wait for dinner. And this correlates to lots and lots of different aspects of the behaviour. It's about controlling impulses. And that's a key part of emotional intelligence. The long-term benefits are also amazing. Adults have better personal relationships, less aggression in their relationships with others because they manage their temper. They're perceived more positively by others because they do well in relationships by understanding what other people think and feel and having good relationship skills. They delay their gratifications. And what we mean by that is rather than just getting what they want immediately, they put in the work. So they put in the work to get the promotion. They put in the exercise to become fit. They eat healthily rather than whatever they want to become well. And at work, they can negotiate better because they've got good people skills. And this leads to greater career success. The benefits are enormous. So I hope that's helped you understand it is so worth us teaching this. And whilst it's still quite a new concept, it's absolutely vital to our children's success now and in the future. The kids that come to our class, those that are from homes that are emotionally literate, that talk about feelings, that help children learn strategies to calm down, that communicate really well with each other. Well, when those kids come to our class, it makes our job so much easier. We can teach them maths or physics or science or English, and they can absorb it. They can ask for help when they need it. They can manage themselves and their feelings. However, if children come to us from families that aren't functioning well, from families where there's lots of arguments and lots of drama, lots of emotional upset, where they haven't been taught to cope when things are hard, or to dig deep or put in the effort, but they get their needs met absolutely immediately, well, then they're going to struggle. And it makes our job even more important. And it makes teaching EQ even more important. In a child's life, their family is vitally important as role models. And then there's you, their teacher, probably the second most important influence on their life. And that's massive. And you can make a difference to what isn't taught at home. So let's look at the 5 elements of emotional intelligence. We start with self-awareness, recognizing emotions and how they affect us. Then we look at self-control, controlling impulsive feelings and behavior. So not snatching that toy or throwing that book in anger because they don't understand it. It's about managing emotions healthily, following through on commitments and delaying gratification. And then there's motivation. Wow, motivation matters, doesn't it? Kids who want to achieve, who want to get to the next level, to better their grades, to learn to read. Those kids do very, very well. But motivation is not necessarily something somebody has to be born with. We as teachers and educators can encourage motivation. We can create motivation, and it's really important we do. Then there's social awareness, as we've said, picking up on the emotions and needs and concerns of other people in a group really matters for teamwork, really matters for having good working relationships. And then there's relationship management, communicating well. Every job anyone ever goes into, communicating clearly is vital. Inspiring and influencing other people. How do we do that? Every single job has an element where you do work in a team, at least to some degree. And if we can teach kids to do that well, it will really help them later. But it will also help them whilst they're at school. And of course, we want them to be able to manage conflict. So I'm going to look at you now with you at these elements of emotional intelligence and how in the classroom you can bring them to life. Step 1, self-awareness. The most important, I think, the most important element of emotional intelligence is self-awareness, naming and recognizing feelings. We want children to learn that all their emotions are valid and valuable and okay. They don't have to bury down their sadness if they are grieving. They don't have to push that frustration away that they don't understand and pretend that they do. We want kids to look at their emotions, know what's going on for them, and then decide how to react, not just impulsively react. Sobbing all over the classroom, throwing chairs, ripping up books, none of that is helpful to a child. But if they're really sad, it's important they say and we get them support. If they're really frustrated, we need to explain things in a different way that they do understand. If they're really angry, we need to listen to what's making them angry and see if we can help them affect change. There are some reactions that are always okay. Asking for help is one of them. And we need to teach that to kids. All feelings are absolutely fine, but only some reactions are okay. And when they choose good reactions, what they're choosing is emotional intelligence. So how do we teach it? Well, here are some ideas that I've thought of, but I am absolutely sure as experienced teachers, you will have so many of your own ideas around emotional intelligence and literacy. So a thing I think is a lovely thing to do with your class is have a 5-minute daily check-in. Everyone comes in the morning and you say their name, check the register, and you say, how are you? And rather than the kids just say good or fine, they start to use a language of emotion. And they could perhaps say, oh, I'm fed up because I wanted it to still be the weekend. Or I'm really excited because we've got cooking today. Or I'm quite relaxed. I had a really nice walk into school. To start using the language of emotion is really useful, and a daily check-in can do that well. And then I say bring feelings into as many discussions as you can. Reiterate again and again, there are no bad feelings. It's what you do with them that matters. And then model self-awareness. You are such an important role model to the kids you teach. So you could say to them, do you know, I am so frustrated. I feel so frustrated that you're all still talking. I am going to ask you to be quiet now for 5 minutes, absolutely quiet, and then we will discuss this exercise. So tell them how you feel, ask what you need. And then of course there are gratitudes, asking for help. You could say, I have just got too much to do and I'm feeling overwhelmed, so I'm going to ask you to go and do a little job for me. Yeah, show them how to ask for help and acknowledge how you feel. Encourage kids to be aware when things have gone wrong, rather than just telling them off or giving them a consequence. Ask them, what could you have done differently? This teaches them to reflect and to be aware of themselves. And it's a really good question. A lovely way to teach feelings to younger children is to play the alphabet game. As a class, see how many different emotions they can come up with for each letter of the alphabet. So B could be bored, C could be content, D could be desperately tired. You get the idea. And with older children, written work on emotions, expressing how a poem has made them feel, drawing their feelings, listening to music and saying how that has made them feel are all really, really useful ways. Kids need a language of emotions and they need to be able to recognize what they're feeling. The benefits of self-awareness are vast. If you can understand your emotions and how they impact your behavior, you can make changes. So if you know that when you're frustrated, you switch off, next time you feel frustrated, instead of switching off, you could ask for support, or maybe write yourself a clear to-do list. Yeah, you can take appropriate action if you know what's going on. Children can also come to realize that if they change their thoughts, they can change their feelings. So if they're very scared about a test or an exam, they might sit in that exam and their head is just clouded with worries and they can't concentrate. If instead they think to themselves, this is a chance to show what I know, I have worked hard for this, I'm going to do my best, then they will feel more confident. So if children realize that changing their thoughts changes their feelings, that's pretty powerful. It does enable us to ask for help or change your emotional state. And through recognizing patterns of behavior that aren't helpful, as I said before, they can challenge these. We want them to respond to situations, not just react. So scientifically, this is how it works. Our brains have a tendency to follow pathways that already exist. So if when I'm angry, I shout, that becomes a pattern. It's a neural pathway, but it's not a healthy one. It's not a pattern that serves me well, okay? By being self-aware and knowing that if I'm angry, I shout, I can change it. And I can make myself instead, every time I'm angry, write down what's bothering me until that becomes my new pathway. And that's why self-awareness matters. It helps us change habits and patterns of behavior. So now we move to self-control. And self-control is taking all that self-awareness and doing something about it. If a child is able to manage their impulsive behavior and change their habits and patterns of behavior around their feelings, they are less likely to hit, slap, shout, take drugs, smoke, and be aggressive, all the things we don't want them to do. We want them to be able to control themselves and not just follow their impulse. We want them to think before they act. So they are aware of how they feel and then they think, what am I going to do with that, rather than just act. Managing emotions enables people to think more clearly and make better decisions. Scientists have proven that if you calm down, you are 30% more intelligent. That's huge, that's massive. You're going to make better choices. And we want kids making really good choices. So if they've got in a fight in the playground and they're about to hit somebody, knowing that if they take a few deep breaths, shrug their shoulders, release some tension, they will clear their mind and they will make a better choice and probably walk away. So managing emotions enables them to think more clearly, make better decisions. Delaying gratification, putting off the rewards whilst they put in the work, is a really great thing for kids to learn. Obviously, if they do that, they'll know that by doing all the revision will lead to a better test result. Yeah. Doing all the exercise will enable them to do better in their football team. Self-control shows up as getting homework done, being on time, great time management, being reliable. And all of these things are so useful academically. They're also really useful socially and wonderful skills for the world of work. So yes, self-control matters. I am sure you have heard of the Marshmallow Test, but I could not leave it out because it's such an important study. So it took place in the 1960s at Stanford University, and the kindergarten children, very young children, 3 to 5, were taken into a room and told they were going to be asked some questions and they could get a marshmallow at the end of it. However, the researcher was suddenly called out the room, obviously on purpose, and she said to the children, "I'm sorry, I have to leave, but if you don't eat that marshmallow now, when I'm gone, you'll get 2 when I come back." The kids didn't know they were being videotaped, which of course these days we would not allow, but they were being recorded, and some kids sat beautifully quiet and waited. Some distracted themselves, so they didn't eat the marshmallow, but others grabbed that marshmallow and ate it, not prepared to wait at all or able to manage their impulses. This is where it gets interesting though. The study followed these kids all through their lives, and they found there was a direct link between those who could wait for the better reward and those who did well in their careers, their family, and their adult life. By delaying gratification, people learn to put in the work and get that great end result. It's something we really need to encourage in kids. Kids who don't manage their impulses, they're more likely to be aggressive, depressed, and have a lot of problems. They're more likely to have health issues, obesity, drug dependency. They're more likely to leave a job which doesn't seem to be progressing rather than figure out how to progress it. They're less likely to get a university degree. It affects them in so many ways. Self-control really, really matters. So how do we teach it? Well, name it and praise it when you see it happen. When you see someone manage their impulses and make a good choice, big it up, yeah? And then model it, model it. Say to kids, "Oh, do you know, this morning I was about to reach my 3rd cup of coffee. And I thought, no, that is not healthy. So I left it." Yeah. Tell them how you've been training, running each evening because you want to be able to run a marathon. Tell them you've taken on extra study because you want to progress at work. And then role play loads of scenarios, saying no, flying into a rage, and resisting peer pressure, being annoyed with somebody and finding a way through it, calming yourself down, role play it, and get the kids to act this out. And then discuss characters in a book and consequences. Get them to think about when people do act absolutely in the moment with their emotions without thinking it through, how many things can go wrong. And then look at removing temptations and explaining why. For example, if you set up a reading corner for the children you teach, move everything apart from the books and the cushions out the way and say to them, "I've took everything else away," for example, the toys, "because in this corner, I want you to read." We do this automatically when children have exams. They just sit at a table, nothing to distract them, and they focus. So let's do that. Let's do that and help children control themselves. And then as they get older, explain why and help them identify temptations on their own. Those temptations might be friends that leave them astray. It might be their phone. Yeah. Encourage them to take actions to eliminate and support their own self-control. So talk to them about how and where they work at home. Do they have music with words on when they're writing, for example, which will distract them? Yeah. Teach them to focus and teach them self-control. in so many ways, and it will really massively benefit them. And then motivation. Well, motivation is why you're here today. You want to learn more about this so you can help your students, right? Maybe you want to take on a different role at work, whatever. You have a motivation to be here. It's what propels people to study, set goals, aim high, keep on learning. It's so important all through life, and it is not fixed. Children are not stones. They're not a fixed state. They are developing and growing all the time. And science has proved this with neuroplasticity. Our brains grow and develop all the time. So do areas of motivation. So we can teach it and we can encourage it. How do we encourage it? Well, we talk constantly about growth mindset. If a child says, I am rubbish at maths, you say to them, don't say that. It's not a fixed thing. You are learning to be better at maths. Yeah. Promote that growth mindset. I can't manage my temper. I'm learning to manage my temper. Yeah. Encourage growth is so important. If you develop meaningful, respectful relationships with your students, you will start to know what motivates them. Do they want to be a brilliant reader? Does art really matter to them? Do they want to make lots of money? Do they want to be able to support their family? What motivates them? Some people are motivated towards things, so they might want to get a brilliant grade or handwriting pen. Some are motivated against. Do they not want to lose their break time by getting their work done? Figure out what motivates your students, but grow a community of learners in your classroom. So don't just deliver information to the kids you are teaching. Encourage them to be learners. Ask them to go away, find out some facts and come back and tell you. Yeah. Teach them that learning is interesting and it's exciting, no matter who you are. And then make the pathways unique. So if your class is motivated as a whole to raising their reading levels, that's one great class motivation. But the pathways need to be individual, because if you say our motivation is everyone to get on the yellow band of reading, for example, some children will do it easily, then have no more motivation. And for some, it will be too hard and they won't feel motivated. So you need step-by-step goals for individuals. So when you've read 3 books, you will get to the next level. That's fantastic. That's what you're aiming for. And then celebrate every stage achieved. Review it, give feedback, then give another small goal. Because every time a child achieves and gets positive feedback, they get a little hit of dopamine in their brain and it encourages them to do more. If the goal is too far away, they will lose motivation. If it's too easy, they will lose motivation. So step by step with lots and lots of lovely descriptive feedback. That helps with motivation. And then share inspiring stories of motivated people from diverse backgrounds with them. Oh, this is just such a brilliant way to motivate people. Perhaps you have a child who's dyslexic in your class. Share stories about people with dyslexia who have gone on to be really successful and enterprising. Perhaps you have a child in your class with a disability. Share inspiring stories of Paralympics or disabled people who have encouraged political change. Talk about people from diverse backgrounds and how they achieved. Stories have always inspired people and they can be great motivators. 2 books I really recommend are Goodnight Stories for Rebel Girls, which is full of stories of girls from so many different backgrounds with so many different hurdles to overcome who really achieved. And then Stories for Boys Who Dare to Be Different. Boys sometimes get a short straw in terms of role models and they feel they have to be alpha males. Not the case. There are so many ways for boys to be brilliant, and it's very motivating for boys to hear stories of a really diverse range of men. So praise efforts and hard work, not just achievement. Praise goes a very long way in motivating people. Give timely and descriptive feedback with points for progress that are short-term and long term. Model a growth mindset. As I said, tell them what you're working on. Have goals for your class, mix them up so everyone has a chance to shine. I once won a trophy for being kind, and it really motivated me to carry on being kind. And I have recently written a book on kindness, and I won that trophy when I was 8. But because it was valued and appreciated, that kindness, it motivated me to keep on that path. It's really powerful, really powerful. Never underestimate the power of a certificate or a phone call home. Kids love, love, love those things. Encourage self-assessment and competition with the self. So you could say to a child, for example, and this is, I mentioned this a bit later on, to rate it, how hard do you think you're trying at the moment? And if they said 6 out of 10, say, what will get you to 7? And they might say, well, maybe if I stop chatting in class. Yeah, encourage them to self-reflect. Help them find success in many forms. Not all children will be academic, but we do want them all to be motivated. So help them value and find success in lots and lots of different ways. And encourage you, what can I learn from this approach to failure rather than despair? What can I learn from this is really valuable. And it turns something that perhaps didn't go wrong into a building block. So we've looked at motivation. We're now going to look at the benefits of social awareness, being aware of other people. Not all kids are good at this. Children on the autistic spectrum can find this very hard, and it needs to literally be taught. But it is very, very important. And it isn't just kids on the autistic spectrum that struggle with empathy. Some children just do not have it to the same degree as others, and it can cause bullying, it can cause problems in group work, it can cause relationship difficulties, and it's a problem in the classroom. A high degree of empathy in the classroom where kids are aware of each other, respectful to each other, and behave considerately to each other creates harmony and inclusion and cooperation. Really, really useful. So encourage kids to write stories from different angles. They might take it from the hero and then the villain. They might look at different characters and how one experience felt to lots of different people. This really encourages empathy. When you're having a debate, ask them to argue from both sides so they don't just see one view of things. Explore body language with them, and with particularly young children, get them to see what it means when someone clenches their fists or narrows their eyes, or when they sit in a relaxed way. Watch documentaries, TV shows about people from a wide range of backgrounds. Try and read each other's expressions, make a game out of it. You could play feeling charades and get them to study. Get them to study other people. It's really useful. And then when it comes to managing relationships, well, this is vital, isn't it? Having positive and healthy relationships and being able to get along with other people is so good for us and so useful later on in life. Being able to manage conflict will keep them physically safe. So if later on at some point in their life they are out and there is a fight starting, maybe on them, their ability to walk away, to stay calm, will keep them safe. Their ability to appease the other person will also keep them safe. But it doesn't have to be to that degree. It can be in work too, or with friendships. It's all about working well as part of a team. So how do we teach good relationship skills? Well, kids tend to like to work with the same people every time, but this doesn't teach them a lot more than how to get on with their friends. So vary groups who work together, encourage lots of experience of leadership and cooperative work. Role play conflict resolution. Ask curious questions. So for example, why do you think you're struggling to work with such and such? What would help? What would help is a great question. A child might say, well, they're not listening to me. I want them to listen better. And so that other child then can take that information on board. So curious questions are really useful. Teach active listening and demonstrate it too. Assign work partners. Don't let kids just choose people who are easy to work with. Encourage them to support children in the lower school, perhaps through reading or walking to a school event, so that they learn how to be a helper. Encourage them to use I messages rather than finger pointing. So, for example, they might say, I felt sad when I was not allowed to play that game, rather than they're horrible, they wouldn't let me play. So encourage I messages. Teach assertiveness skills. We don't want people to be aggressive. We don't want the kids to be aggressive when things aren't going their way. We also don't want them to be passive and allow bad things to happen to them. We want them to be clearly stating what they want and need. Assertiveness skills are invaluable. You could present a topic on healthy relationships or friendships and have your students draw up a checklist of what makes a good friend. Excuse me. This could include being loyal, being trustworthy, being fun, being kind. And in looking at that, students will realise that if they want to have healthy relationships, they need to take those characteristics on board too. Do provide space for support. Sometimes kids are not going to tell you about their relationship troubles in front of others. But actually, from the children I've provided therapy for, I know it's one of the key issues about school is how well kids make friends. It's what they care about most. So do provide space for support so they can come and talk to you if they're struggling. Practice what to do if scenarios. They're always really brilliant. Do them as a whole class. What to do if you're being bullied? What does everyone think should happen? What to do if you know your friend is bullying somebody? What to do if the work is too hard and you're not keeping up? Get people to come up with answers. These can be really, really useful. Encourage your class to be a class of problem solvers, not dwellers. Always ask them, what could make this better? And encourage them to solve problems in relationships. So, to sum it up, emotional intelligence is about understanding and choosing how we think, feel, and act, not just reacting. Emotional intelligence shapes our interactions with others and our understanding of ourselves, and research suggests it's responsible for as much as 80% of the success in our lives. Now, let's check back in with you. So we come full circle to where we started. Are you an emotionally intelligent teacher? Do you apply it to your teaching methods and your own life as a teacher? Because you need to. It will make things better for you, and it will mean you're an excellent role model to the kids that you teach. So, what does it look like to be an emotionally intelligent teacher? Well, it means being self-aware, asking for help if you need it, recognizing what stresses you or motivates you, and bringing more of the motivational stuff into your life. Checking how you feel day to day. And if you are too tired or lethargic or fed up, change what you need to in your life or schedule. You do need to have self-control. Eating that chocolate or reaching for that 10th coffee to keep your energy up, but not spending time exercising or eating well will not help you in the long run. Shouting at your class because you are frustrated with what you have to teach is not useful. Going to your principal and saying, we need to change this is useful. So have some self-control and make good choices. You need to be socially aware. Is your class feeling tense or disengaged? Look for the clues and be empathic. And if they are, take 5 minutes to do some Tai Chi, to do some deep breathing, maybe to get out in the fresh air. Adjust if you need to. It can make a positive difference. So be socially aware. And then relationships. Do you work on your relationships with other teachers? They can be your best allies. And the kids you teach, if you have cooperative, respectful relationships with them, it will reap rewards and it's well worth investing in. Do work on communicating clearly about your needs, wants, and ideas to your colleagues and your head teachers. Listen well to each other too. Manage any conflict with both the children and with the school with a problem-solving, not dwelling approach. So basically, you need to do everything you're asking the children in your care to do too. Emotional intelligence is not the opposite of intelligence. It's not the triumph of your heart over your head. It's bringing the two together, being totally in touch with your feelings and choosing the most helpful thing to do with them. Okay, so that's it for my session with you on emotional intelligence. I have written books that are packed with activities around emotional intelligence and well-being. Create Your Own Kindness, Create Your Own Calm, and Create Your Own Happy, which have got tons of activities you do with children in your classroom to bring this into your classroom. I do hope you've enjoyed this session, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you so much. That was such a wonderful presentation, and we've had some lovely comments and lovely questions. So I'll just get started with that. But before I do, I just want to say a huge thank you to you, Becky, again for taking us through this presentation. I'm sure you'll agree with me when I say that it's been eye-opening hearing about how much we use our emotional intelligence on a day-to-day basis, as well as ways to manage it in a classroom setting. As I mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, we will be sending everyone who attended the webinar a recording and the attendance certificate for you to refer back to and for you to share with your colleagues. However, if you do miss the email, you'll be able to find the recording on the webinar website. If we don't get around to answering every question, or if you'd like to see some samples of Becky's books, please do contact us at collins.international@harpercollins.co.uk. And my colleague will drop the email address in the chat box here. Now onto the Q&A, because there are some absolutely wonderful questions. The first one that we've got asked is, should the guidance and counselling unit teach this as a subject in our schools? Becky, what do you think about this?
I think it's a wonderful thing to teach in a school. I do think it should be part of everything that we teach, you know, getting kids to reflect on how they're feeling and making good choices. But absolutely, as a subject in its own right, if we can teach kids to calm themselves down, to be assertive, to look out for body cues and empathy, fantastic, definitely.
And leading on from that, I guess someone has asked, how can we manage students' frustration and the designated traditional syllabus of the school? And leading on from that, so please take your time in answering this, how can we integrate real life subjects like checking bills, taxes, and other skills that they need in their daily lives, which I think is actually hugely important and not something that's often taught in a lot of schools.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we are tied by curriculums a lot of the time, but within the curriculum, there is scope to be very creative. So, for example, my daughter does cookery at school, and her cookery teacher teaches them about budgeting, about thinking about the diverse needs of a family and how to make food appealing and look appealing to other people, you know. So within the scope of the national curriculum, you can bring in real life issues, definitely. And yes, kids are going to be frustrated. We can offer extracurricular activities at lunchtime and after school, and we can encourage them to find out more about things themselves by teaching kids a growth mindset and to be good learners. They have so much access now to the internet. It is possible, if they have particular niche areas of interest, that we teach them the skills to go away and research that themselves.
Perfect, thank you so much. And someone has asked, actually another question has just come in, which I'll link together. Someone has asked if this method of encouraging motivation is the only way to teach children, because not all children are the same and may learn from different methods, perhaps. Is that correct? And someone has asked, what about children with autism or learning difficulties? How would you recommend encouraging motivation or teaching them in that way?
Yes, absolutely. Small steps. I think when you work with people with autism, it needs to not be out of reach. It doesn't need to be frustrating, and they need to be achievable steps, because so much is frustrating for children with autism. Just being at school can be a sensory overload. So small steps and lots of positive feedback for achievable motivational goals is really key there, and using their preferred method of feedback. So some kids might like stickers rather than praise. They might feel overwhelmed by that social interaction with you, and maybe just having a sticker in a book would work. It's really about knowing your students, because absolutely they're individual, and how they will receive feedback is really different. I am loving reading your comments because I really appreciate people giving me verbal feedback, but I know for some children that can be overwhelming. So it's figuring out what works for them. My daughter's school send little postcards when they've done exceptionally well in the subject, and they come through the post with a stamp on, really old-fashioned. Oh, the delight in my house when these postcards arrive from the English teacher saying you've worked so hard this term. And then they're quite random how they turn up, but they're really valued. So it's just figuring out what works and keeping it unique to the individual learner.
I think that's such a lovely practical thing to be able to do within your class. And you've spoken, Becky, about a few of the things that you've seen your children's school do to help with giving praise and giving feedback. But I guess something that has come into the forefront during the pandemic is Zoom classes and online classes. And in many ways, they're wonderful because this is how we can host things like this and reach all of you all over the world, no matter where you are and in a variety of different time zones. Thank you again for joining us if you're from somewhere that's a bit more early or late in the day. But someone has asked, I think this is a really interesting question, how do you feel about making students open their cameras, switch their cameras on in a Zoom class and allocating almost a quarter of their marks on that? Would this affect their emotional stability? And I wonder if you had any thoughts on that, because we were talking about this actually, weren't we, before the presentation started on workplaces enforcing this as well.
I think we have to be really respectful of the fact that many people have very different home lives. So one child might put their camera on and they're in a lovely bedroom and they've got lots of space and privacy and they're confident and comfortable about how they look and they're happy speaking publicly. And then you might have another child who's in a chaotic environment with very little space. It's very messy. The camera doesn't work very well. Their Wi-Fi is not so good. And by asking them to do that, you have completely stressed and overwhelmed them, and it's too much and it gets in the way of their learning. And actually we need to be all about making it easier for children to learn and making it as accessible as possible. And that doesn't always mean putting a camera on. So we need to be sensitive to the difference in regard to money, family setup scenarios and confidence. Definitely. I think that's a big ask.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for clarifying that. And someone has asked, I guess, on the back of that question, how can we help to ease frustration that children might feel during online classes? I know you have some wonderful mindfulness techniques and breathing exercises. Could you just touch on those very quickly?
Yes, definitely. And I think if you can provide written support to anything that is taught online, even just in bullet points, it will really help children who have got overwhelmed during their online lesson. It'll keep them on track afterwards, because I think there's that fear that they're struggling with their technology, perhaps they've missed a little bit, oh no, it's all gone wrong, and then they start to panic. So if you can back it up with some written guidelines, particularly in regard to what you want them to do next, that's really, really valuable. I think if you can start your online sessions with a little bit of breathing or a little bit of relaxation, some calming music, and just make sure that they're very present and focused. Ask them to turn their phones off, minimize distractions, and really let them know how very, very happy you are they are there. Children like to feel welcomed in. Yeah, they don't want to feel they're just another thing on your tick list or that you've got loads to do and you're dead stressed. They need to feel that they are welcome and you really appreciate this time with them. And that goes a long way, I think.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Someone has asked how to best handle a self-centered person who doesn't want to listen to others' opinions and who believes that he or she is the best in all aspects of life. Do you have any advice for that?
We all come across those people, don't we? At some point, we all come across those people. And if we can stop that when we're young, that's really, really useful. I think something I mentioned earlier was getting someone right two sides of a debate, or to read a book and discuss how each character may feel, and then directly relating that to real life, you know? And maybe that child needs a bit more intensive work on that. So perhaps acknowledging how you see them behave and saying to them, this is something I really want you to work on, because you'll find it's much, it's much easier to get on with other people. So let's make that one of your goals, to be able to give other people a chance to speak and see other sides. I really want to help you do better at that. They might not like to hear it, but it will do them and other people so many favors. But then give them the tools. Don't just tell them off for it or think of them as an annoying person because of it. You're their teacher, so teach them to do better in regard to that by tooling them up.
Wonderful, thank you so much. Someone has asked, has said that at their school they put a lot of emphasis on mindfulness, and whether or not you think it plays an important role in early years, which I think is something that you've spoken about in your previous webinar with us. So if you want to go and have a look at that, and that's linked on our webinar website. But if you'd just like to touch on that for us, Becky, that'd be great.
Absolutely. Mindfulness as a term is bandied about a lot, and it can seem quite confusing to people or a bit too deep. You know, is it about meditation? Is it about staring for hours at a flower? But actually what it's about is being completely in the moment. So a child isn't worrying about what they did at home and how they spilt something or how they fell out with mum, and they're not worrying about what's going to happen this afternoon. Oh no, it's maths, I don't like maths. They are totally focused on what's happening right now. Their mind is full of the present. Yeah. And in order to do that, we have to really, really help them relax. Because if they're feeling tense, it's because they're worrying about what's happened before and what's happened after. And there's some lovely, lovely ways you can do it. Singing is a great mindfulness activity. When we're singing, those words are in our head, not our worries. And that's a really lovely way to get a kid in the moment. Encourage them to take photographs is a lovely thing too. They have to totally focus on what they're doing. Or you could encourage them to do an experiment which totally absorbs them. Mindfulness can be active, but it's also about being really, really calm and in the moment. And it is so good for kids because otherwise their poor brains are just full of worries and concerns and cares, and they have to let that go. And then they will start to think more clearly and make better choices. But if they're constantly being rushed from one thing to another, heads full, they don't make good choices.
And speaking about being present and in the moment, I've just had a look at the time and our hour is nearly up, which is so sad because we've still got so many wonderful questions. But thank you so much for your comments again. And Becky, if I could just ask you to close this webinar off with one takeaway that you would love those listening today to really take into their day, their week, their teaching, what would that be? The floor is yours.
My takeaway to you is, please, before you start your classes every day, just check in with yourself. What are you feeling? Can you do anything to make that better? Can you park that worry for later? Can you de-stress? Can you get yourself a drink? You be more comfortable? What do you need? Ask yourself, what do I need to make this day go better? And then try and meet your needs, because you really, really are the key to those children learning these skills and doing well, and you really do matter. So yeah, be self-aware.
Wonderful, and what a brilliant note to end on. Thank you so much again, Becky. Thank you so much to everyone for joining us. We've loved interacting with you today. If you have any questions or you'd like to learn anything else about Collins and our webinars, do check us out at www.collins.co.uk/webinars, or drop us an email at collins.international@harpercollins.co.uk. Thank you so much again, and take care and have a very emotionally strong start to the day. Take care. Bye.